It's Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. Um, I'm really trying to take this Harry Potter very seriously in the portions that I know. Um, Again, I see that Harry Potter looks like an adult version of somebody that I went to high school with that is now on my Facebook page, whatever his name was. That same person when I was in Smithtown as a youth, and I did not know he even went to school with me, even though Lloyd Harbor only had like 90 students. Um, he showed up at a 4th of July party in Smithtown. I was with the Russos, and he shows up next door. Um, he's been putting up on Facebook a lot of this winter club that he still attends, um, which is interesting considering Mayor Adams is in a winter term in New York City. Anyhow, um, so I'm watching Harry Potter, and he has this look of this now adult from my portion of Hogwarts at whatever Triwizard Champion is, whatever for. Um, so I'm watching that, watching for the relevant pieces. I also, when my father had the problem in Cold Spring Harbor, the last problem before we had to sell the house and move back to Queens, they assigned me, or they introduced me to some crumb looking representative, the KRUM, from this Bulgarian reference on whatever. So when I came back to Bayside, my senior year at St. John's, they introduced me. And again, as an adult, there's been somebody who looks like Sergeant Friday from Dragnet. So in the local area, being a Triwizard Championship, like, and this overlaying of by land, by air, by sea, who are the representatives and what does it mean? They've already won the championship, or they were already designated. In this particular Hogwarts, um, it says something about um, that the castle Hogwarts was chosen to host this event. It opens up with some game of Quidditch where they introduced the Bulgarians and Crumb, although the real in the field Crumb introduced himself. I looked at up Bulgaria. I see the colors on the flag. I see now that there was some soccer World Cup thing. I now see some relation to Qatar. Um, Growing up, I had no idea what any of this actually meant. Um, I noticed there is a scene where Harry interacts with the fire, calling Sirius black. Um, Again, Russo happens to be a very big Hollywood producer name, just so the Yates fans don't get upset at. There's a lot of crossover. I have a really big part in humanity, um, as far as time and space goes. Um, Anyhow, so I also noticed, oh, they have a piece again about Hagrid, um, and questions about the father's cloak to Harry. The Harry person looking actually like Flaherty, and the Hagrid person looking very much like Russo, um, which was a 4th of July, like the neighbors invited one side was Flaherty, the other side was Cattaruzza at that dead end block party for whatever was going on there. Um, because I know we have, um, and again, there's the um, giant woman who's in charge of the flowers, who are all in blue. Um, don't want to get that and ruffle feathers and upset somebody about I'm I'm not here about beauty contests. That's not my thing, but it does tend to aggravate or agitate certain situations. And I know that I don't at the moment look like one of the flowers that the costume or wardrobe department would like us to be dressed as. Again, the situation in New York and the lack of ability to obtain monetary stipend of any kind on my part has really deteriorated. Like, I have to rely on donations from Lewis, and this is what's in the stores. It's not like there's tailors and so on and so forth any longer. So here I am. I noticed also on the, I mean, this is how serious the fight has gotten. It's a one-way fight. And it seems like I've been at the losing end of it, and I don't know why. Um, so there's also this part of the Deathly Hallows different series. This one that I was mentioning, these pieces, was the Goblet of Fire, but crossover to, or fast forward to the Deathly Hallows, and different piece of epithet, different documentary or journal piece, different whatever, in almost like slices of things going on all at the same time. Um, when I'm in that, there's this crossover event where I call it the in between. Again, if the Earth has like a grape peel or an onion skin of programming of time and space, um, if that shield is not in performance with the anatomy in the correct synchronicity to maintain homeostasis. I'll just use myself since I'm the one who has the extra special clock. Um, in a banana peel, of course, because I don't want this to be questioned or challenged by any human. Um, so there's this where Earth stands at the moment in the way that its shield is interacting with humanity in some kind of programming, in the kinesthetic field, like almost the inertia G field. And then there's this way to move a extra special clock in almost like a protected airfield. Um, it's just like instantaneous. Everything feels homeostatic. It feels so much different than where I'm existing on a day to day in this version of New York. Um, and at this point, because it's not a consistent life programming in the shield that protects, I call it the in between. Um, there's the derogatorous interactive program that I'm currently living in, where it doesn't feel right at multiple levels. Then there's the in between, which is synchronized perfectly. I'm assuming one can only get to that level of perfect programming based on my anatomical clock feature that I have with my extra special son. Um, in almost like two rings if they separate briefly and there's this in-between crossover event briefly, um, where time and space exists, but it doesn't always necessarily perform, feel, or act the way you are here. Um, but then there's this, um, and it's something you can't see. It's a sensory. I mean, again, the human is built as a sensory organ, so it's just something you feel and you just know as you move through it. Um, so I'm, and then there was levels up to that. At Deathly Hallows, they reference it looking one way. I know the part that I was moved into silhouetted very differently. Um, Again, I don't know if that's part of my Tom riddle, um, where there's more than one Tom, for different whatever and whatever. Um, and then this morning I see that CWS is referencing Joe Biden as a babysitter, announcing. I mean, I, of course, try to stay traditionally North American, where we respect our elder, our president, our family member who's in the White House accordingly. You don't always agree with them, but if anybody tries to say anything, then you stick with your home representative. At least that's what I was taught. So there's that. And then, so again, I don't know if it's this above the presidential level, speaking of in some satire or some comedic way, as claiming him the babysitter, and then people's reaction to if that's what someone else sees him as. I was watching their reaction, which I thought was very interesting, at trying to figure out how this visual interpretation of reality that exists outside of New York but has a tie to some York representatives, some shipping and containment and control of the waterways, which is incredibly important. And then there's the aerospace um, piece of. I just feel like I'm caught all the way in between all of these pieces. Um, and of course, I have a very special mechanical part in this preservation of, and like, I mean, again, the word ruler, in one way, it's a domineering interpretation, but in other ways, in English, it's known as a form of measurement of space and time. If you don't have a mother and a child, how do you ever measure space and time? And for planning purposes, it's an incredibly useful asset if it's treated properly, which I don't feel I have been. So here we are. This is what the beginning of the Goblet of Fire looks like. And now there's this other piece that's really sitting on my whatever, where I'm really uncomfortable with it. I've seen it referenced as clan members. I've seen clan members used in different epithets, some with white pointy hat that when the Africans speak about it, they speak about it with a lot of vile anger. I understand they're upset. However, when it's associated with something called Death Eater, and there's something in our local environment that looks like these machines that have been invested in, they were supposed to end at some point because of the dangerous carcinogenic output of these things that impact the health. And if there is a fight between, I mean, again, I think that there's been a lot of misinterpretation and misplaced anger with a lot of big fights going on and a lot of chosen to target in order for this larger tussle that's going on. I also saw President Biden come out saying that he gave an age range up to 35. I noticed that he didn't give me credit at all in at 44 for trying, like, that the younger than my generation is now inheriting all of these problems in such a way that they've had the most impact and the loudest voices. Like, it is like really hard in humanity to get credit for anything, it feels like, seriously. Um, so here we are. So in here, there's like the Irish against the Bulgarians, just so Harry Potter has an epithet, I assume, or some form of conversation that can go on that's some acceptable whatever, so one doesn't cross over into a conversation of more realism per se that might land one in some serious black trouble. Again, when I was a teenager and I just came back to Queens, one of my cousins growing up, one of the Oceanside cousins now, then they were in Franklin Square, introduced me to her boyfriend Neil at the time, who introduced me to a person that looked very similar to this, although the movie hadn't been out yet and I had no relevance. He was more, I think he described himself more as like a biblical feature, and I was an angel to him. Like, that's how he categorized me. So again, but that goes back to like Sergeant Friday kind of a thing.
Minister for Magic, it gives me great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you.
And at the moment, it looks like my people are suffering from some form of population collapse, which is even more frightening in this New York area. Also heard on the radio yesterday, they mentioned some guy in Florida that I don't know, I don't have a visual reference of, but his last name is Patronus. I'm like, oh, and he was hired to build up Florida. I hope Pearl Station is incredibly proud. But New York looks like some kind or some form of population collapse, which is really concerning.
To the final of the 422nd Quidditch World Cup. Let the match begin.
Now, this is the part where the fire actually speaks directly to Harry Potter.
Serious? I don't have much time, Harry, so let me get straight to it. Did you or did you not put your name into the Goblet of Fire? No. I had to ask. Now, tell me about this dream of yours. You mentioned Wormtail and Voldemort, but who was the third man in the room? I don't know. You didn't hear a name? No. Voldemort's giving him a job to do. It's something important. What was that? He wanted me. I don't know why, but he was going to use his man to get to me. I mean, it was only a dream, right?
And I know who in the field bears the scar on his forehead that they've mentioned in the movie. Just so 4th of July doesn't get confused.
Yes. It's just a dream. Look, Harry. The Death Eaters of the World Cup, your name rising from that goblet. These are not just coincidences. Hogwarts isn't safe anymore. What are you saying? I'm saying the devils are inside the walls. Igor Karkaroff. He was a Death Eater. No one stops being a Death Eater. Then there's Barty Crouch, Heart of Stones, and his own son to Azkaban. Do you think one of them got my name in the goblet? I haven't a clue who put your name in that goblet, Harry, but whoever did is no friend to you. People die in this tournament. I'm not ready for this, serious. You don't have a choice. Someone's coming. Keep your friends close, Harry. Who are you talking to? What? Who says I was talking to anyone? I heard voices. Maybe you're imagining things. Wouldn't be the first one. You're probably just practicing for your next interview, I expect.
Here's the part about the Hagrid meeting with Harry and the flower on his cloak. And the questions about his father's cloak.
Did you bring your father's cloak, I asked you?
Yeah, I brought the cloak. Hagrid, where are we going?
You'll see soon enough. Now pay attention, this is important.
What's with the flower? Hagrid, have you combed your hair?
As a matter of fact, I have. You might let it try the same thing now and again.
Hagrid!
Oh, the cloak. Put the cloak on.
Now, this is a conversation between Moody. Again, in scripted world, I guess it really does code out well for this particular conversation and how the Moody actually want to read, interpret, and then get involved in certain situations.
Sit. Listen to me, Potter. Your pal Diggory. By your age, he can turn a whistle into a watch and have it sing at a time. Miss Delacour, she's as much a fairy princess as I am. As for Crumb, his head may be filled with sawdust, but Karkaroff's is not. They'll have a strategy. And you can bet that it will play to Crumb's strengths. Come on, Potter. What are your strengths? unfair the way I heard it. But I'm not allowed a broom. You're allowed a wand.
MS.
Now, however magical clocks work, I mean, I've heard people call crossover, like my father's been watching and involved with Tom Campbell about, he's been watching near-death experiences and other parts of spirituality in the abstract of there are other people that believe in other things than whatever. So here's a reference within the Deathly Hallows Part 2 of this Harry Potter series. And some form of maybe cloaked conversation, I'm not quite sure. Now, I've had, meaning what I call like this, the in-between, the space in between here and there. There was a different representation, did not look like this. It was a different silhouetted. And then there was also this space in between where the aerospace just produced a different effect. The body felt different. I was in my own body. Body felt different. I was able to interact with what I call Special Task Force Mark. That was the meeting between Father of Time and I called myself at that point Mother of Nature. It was a completely different set of circumstances. The interaction just felt better. And then I'm going to go now to, so they reference it here. And now I'm just going to go to like a local event where they mentioned there was this one bank collapse locally and how what Biden's reaction was. And then what this local late night television personality was saying about it. This is CBS E52, 42, 50, 52.
Every American should feel confident that their deposits will be there, their deposits are safe. Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe.
Not as comforting as he imagines. No one wants an unexpected call from the babysitter that goes, "The kids are safe." You can have total confidence that the kids are safe. Rest assured, your kids are safe. The bottom line is this: all kids have all fingers, and the toaster oven is nowhere near the bathtub.
This morning's Eye Opener is presented by Progressive, making it easy to bundle insurance.
Yeah. That is so true. You get a call at a weird hour, and the president appears on your screen at 9 a.m. Uh-oh, what's it about?
If the sitter calls and tells you everything's okay, it's like, honey, we need to head home.
Yes, immediately.
So I see why people are in line at the bank.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome to CBS Mornings. We've got a big show for you, including...
I'm just going to walk to the back of residence at the moment, just to make one last reference. That's where I am, and it is star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.